David Suzuki, thank you for coming here to WWF Australia today.
Pleased to be here.
For more than 50 years, you've been telling us about the state of the planet. What is it you're actually seeing?
Well, I think the evidence of degradation is all around us. It wasn't 50 years, by the way, it was 40 years. But the evidence is so stunning. You know, I was born in Vancouver in 1936, and my early memories of childhood are all about camping and fishing with my father. We used to go out and troll around Stanley Park, which is in Vancouver, and catch sea-run cutthroat trout. We would jig for halibut off Spanish banks and catch sturgeon in the Fraser or steelhead up in the Vedder River. Today, my grandchildren call me all the time, begging me to take them fishing where I went as a child, and of course, I can't. You know, and Americans, the Americans are fond of saying, well, that's the price of progress. I don't think it's progress to use up the rightful legacy of future generations. And Americans say, well, there's plenty more where that came from. There isn't plenty more where that came from. So we've had these ways of excusing ourselves from the changes that are going on. And I think any elder anywhere on the planet, someone who's 60, 70 years old, ask what it was like in their area when they were children. And they'll all say the same thing. It used to be so different, you know. There used to be trees as far as you could see. The rivers used to be jammed with fish. So the change has been absolutely dramatic in my lifetime. The fish I took for granted as a child are simply not there. But more strikingly, I first came to Australia in 1988, and I fell in love with the country because as a biologist, I look at this place as an absolute unique place. And one of the first things I did was to go to the reef, the Barrier Reef off Port Douglas. And I was just boggled. I mean, I was blown away by it. And I saw an apartment for sale, and my wife and I bought it because we said, this is paradise. Well, in the years that I've been coming, I was there 2 years ago. We went out to the reef. I was shocked. I mean, in that short time, from '88 to 2004, there are very, very perceptible changes. The abundance, and we went back to the same place that we went in 1988. The abundance of fish and the amount of dead coral was quite overwhelming. Now, the people leading the tourists out, they're still raving about it. Isn't it great? But, and I guess that's what they have to do. But having had that 20-year interval, I can see the reef is in trouble.
It's interesting, a report was released just last week with regard to the marine protected areas that have been set up under the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. And in those areas, finally recovery seems to be coming back.
Great.
But in the other areas, not at all. But the importance of marine protected areas is just incredibly important. Do you see this elsewhere in the world?
I'm thrilled that MPAs can actually allow the recovery because, you know, it looks pretty considerable. When you see stag coral all basically dead and there's nothing in there, you think, oh my God, you know, this has probably taken hundreds of years to build up. But if MPAs work, that's wonderful. The problem, of course, is that humanity as a whole, even though oceans cover 70% of the planet, have set aside such tiny areas for MPAs. And usually MPAs are decided once a fisherman have fished the whole area out and they say, oh God, okay, you know, you can make it an MPA. And the remarkable thing is that often they come back to life. But we need huge areas. We did an analysis of what we need to protect marine areas for salmon. Now, salmon are not like the coral animals that you see down here that hang around. They migrate over vast distances. And what we found was that if we're going to protect salmon through MPAs, over 70% of the coast would have to be off limits for fishing. Well, I mean, that's impossible. So I think that we've got to hurry and really get involved in much larger areas that are no fish zone and, you know, no go zones. But we've got to get rid of this whole idea that dragging giant nets across the bottom of the ocean is allowable. And I'm ashamed of the fact that the United Nations, which has a resolution to ban all deep sea bottom dragging, my country, along with Australia and New Zealand and the United States, is opposing this. I mean, like drift nets and like long lines, we've got to get rid of these technologies.
Yeah, this is a, a clear target with regard to high seas fishing and just recognizing that sort of the global commons is just being eaten up and vacuum cleaned away.
Our problem is that we're terrestrial air-breathing animals, so we tend to look from that limited perspective, and we think anything below the oceans, well, I mean, it's just water, it's just an endless treadmill with new fish coming out, so just catch them and they'll replace themselves. But that's the attitude of our terrestrial bias. And what I see now is the same thing happening underground. We used to think that life only existed a few hundred meters down below the surface of the Earth, and then there was a sterile area. And then oil drillers started discovering that their bits were all contaminated way down underground. So now, as you know, we've begun to look deep underground, and what do you know? There's life 11 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. So now you say, wait a minute, now if we calculate how much life is there below ground compared to what there is above, there's more living material under the Earth, under the surface, than there is above it. That is, all the whales and fishes and trees and wildebeest, all of that added together weighs less than the protoplasm underground. And yet, what are we doing? Oh, coal is the energy of our future. And we can now take carbon dioxide produced by burning coal and sequester it into the ground, pump it into the Earth. We know that if you pump carbon dioxide underground, it stays down there. We have no idea why it stays down there. Is it a chemically bond? What's it binding to? How long will it stay down there? But what's it going to do to the life that exists below the surface? We have no idea what these organisms under the ground do in terms of energy transfer from the core of the Earth to the surface, nutrient flow through the soil. What about the water filtration? We know none of this, and yet we're all trumpeting clean coal and sequestration of carbon dioxide. This is insane. It's absolutely insane, but it all comes from our chauvinism. We're a critter that stands on the ground. We don't give a damn what's under there. We think it's all uniform. We don't give a damn what's under the water that covers 70% of the Earth.
David, in some of your writing, you call human beings a super species. But clearly some of the things we are doing is, are not so super.
Oh, well, I don't say we're a super species, meaning we're super. I just mean that we are a new kind of force on the planet. There has never been in the 4 billion years that life has existed a single species able to alter the biological, chemical, and physical features of the Earth as we are doing now. Never a single species that did that. And now we are doing it with the power of our science and our technology and our absolutely insatiable consumptive demand. We now are transforming the Earth. Now, we've never had we've always been a tribal, local species. We've never had to worry about what's that tribe doing on the other side of that lake or the other side of the mountain or the ocean. We're a local animal. We may have known 200 people in a lifetime and traveled over, a few dozens of kilometers. And if we trashed our area, we just moved somewhere else. Well, it's different now. We've filled up the planet. We can't move somewhere else. And now, for the first time in history, we have to consider what is the collective impact of 6.5 billion people. Well, if you've been to Rio in '92 or Kyoto in '97, as I was, it's not easy. We've never had to do this before, and oh, it's so excruciatingly, painfully slow, and all kinds of people are obfuscating the issues and saying, no, it's not happening. But the fact is, we've got to do it, and we've got to do it faster than we're doing.
David, on climate change and global warming, the issue that is probably the most pressing on the planet, what is it that you're observing?
For me, the most stunning observation I've made was flying into a town called Smithers in northern British Columbia. And for the last half hour of our plane flight, as far as I could see on both sides of the airplane, and this is quite high up, the forest has turned from green into a bright red. The forest has been trashed by the invasion of pine beetles that now turn the evergreens into dead needles which turn bright red. Why is that? Because the cold winters have to get down below 20 below zero in order to kill the pine beetle and keep its range limited to the southern areas.